All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our talk. Thanks. If you want to wave, you can wave. So yeah, we thought we'd do something a little bit different for our session, a bit different from some of the other talks you might have seen. Definitely less corporate. So the thing we all have in common is that we are all making a living from no code on our own, not employed. And so we thought, because we've all got kind of different ways of doing it, some of us are freelancing, James has got a SaaS, and Max runs a kind of education business. We thought we would just tell you a bit about our stories, in case there's anyone out there who is currently employed and looking to get into no-code full-time. Maybe you can get some hints and tips from us, and then at the end we'll open up for questions. So I guess I'll go first. Yeah, so like many people here, I would class myself as kind of non-technical or loosely technical. My previous job was kind of co-founder of a startup where I was doing business development. And it was a tech startup where we had a team of developers and I really had no idea what was going on. I kind of understood and wished I could code. They said, Kieran, why don't you try learning to code and then you can help the dev team, and I tried and it didn't work out. And then I discovered NoCode in 2019 and started building with Bubble, and somehow it just clicked and really just made a lot of sense for the way my brain works. And suddenly I found I could build apps, and within a couple of months of discovering it, I'd built my first full SaaS app, which just blew my mind that was possible. And then, of course, the next few years I was still employed, but I was just building app after app in my spare time and absolutely loving every second and launching things left and right. And they were all terrible. They mainly all failed. But I loved it so much that about a year ago, I quit the startup and just started doing freelance Bubble dev work. So I'm now a full-time developer, which is super cool for someone who a few years before was totally non-technical. Yeah, I guess that's it. As well as that, I build my own SaaS products, and I try and build them up. The dream is to have a SaaS, right, that's earning recurring revenue, and you don't have to do anything. I have a very small one that is earning $700 a month, and that's nice because it covers all of my other mainly Bubble bills. And I've also built one small SaaS product which had no revenue, but I managed to sell it. So that's another thing that I do. And then apart from that, I also teach Bubble, so I make courses. And out of the three things that I do, I probably made the most money actually from making courses and selling those. So there are video courses. And then after that, freelancing is my second biggest source of revenue. But obviously, that is very much tied to my time. And then the third one is the SaaS product. So that's my story. Who wants to go next? Should we go to James, because a bit different with your SaaS story?
Yeah, hello everyone. Yes, I'm James. I guess I'm coming at it from the perspective of running a full-time SaaS, I guess. My background is I've run startups before and done the whole VC-funded route and used the money to hire a development team to build the product. And this time I'm doing it. I've built the product myself, really, for the first version. Last few years, I also came from kind of a product management background. So the current product that I'm working on is called User Loop. It's a Shopify app for helping retailers collect customer feedback. It's built with Bubble. It's processing millions of customer feedback responses, so it's going quite well. It started as a side project, so I kind of started it as a side hustle when I was in a full-time job. And after about a year, so 6 months ago, I went onto it full-time. It's generating decent revenue. Hundreds of Shopify stores use it, and it's all been built with Bubble. Yeah, so I didn't have any programming background. Obviously, from having a product management background, I was used to interacting with engineers and speccing stuff. But it was really coming across Bubble and realizing, actually now I can build a really high quality product. None of my customers know that it's built with Bubble. They don't care. It's got good reviews on the Shopify App Store. And it's, from their perspective, it delivers everything they want. But yeah, it's been an absolutely fantastic experience to build it. And I've met, so many great people in the no-code community. It's so friendly, supportive. And yeah, it's been really great. And that's kind of my full-time thing now. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not like it's a passive income. You're constantly dealing with talking to customers, developing features, marketing. So it's not like it is like this, like a completely passive income. It is very hard work. But yeah, it's super rewarding, and it's the most fun project business that I've ever worked on, because I'm able to iterate the product, move it so fast, compared to some of the coded competitors I have. It's like I will have a conversation with a customer with a feature request, and it will be shipped an hour later. And you know that the ability to do that makes customers very happy. So like that's actually really good. So yeah, it's been fantastic. So that's the SaaS kind of perspective, I guess.
Great. Kelly, do you want to talk about your story?
Yeah, sure. So I had a career before. I'm a freelance Bubble developer, so that's what I do. And I started my career in nonprofits. I was like an operations director in a theater company. And I did that for almost a decade, and did a lot of grant writing and did a lot of database management and, you know, all the nonprofit-y stuff. And then picked up design skills while I was at that job. So left that job and became a web designer and a branding designer, right? And did that for a long time. But I really missed like the structure, the data, and all of the sort of like, you know, that stuff. Design was such a soft, subjective thing, and I never really like loved that aspect of my career. So I was looking for something else, and I don't know, I came upon Bubble, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try that thing, you know. And I opened it up and just kind of immediately was like, oh, this is me. This is like built for me, right? And I had this idea for a long time, just a way to organize the grant writing process. And so I was like, oh, I could build that idea in this thing. I'm going to try it out, right? And within a couple days, I had a little prototype, and I was like, well, this is cool, you know. I joined Max's community, which he'll tell you about, and Max, a couple of days later, was like, hey, I know you're working on a thing. We're doing a demo day. Do you want to show the thing you're building? And I had like just started in Bubble like a week before. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was very ugly what I had built. Even though I'm a designer, I just like slapped some stuff on the page. And so I said no, because it was 3 weeks away. I was like, get out of here, you know. And then I was talking to my partner. I was like, maybe I'll do that thing. And he was like, you should do the thing. You really should do the thing. And so I did it. And so 3 weeks, I built this full app in Bubble. And I was like, this is awesome. This is so fun. I was really nervous. I did the demo day and didn't really realize Bubble, like my brain is made for Bubble. And so I didn't realize that it's hard to build in Bubble. It is hard now. I really know because I know more. Which makes you know how dumb you are sometimes. The demo day was a bit like, I don't know, I think of a surprise for myself and for other people that like you could build a pretty Bubble app. It was really hard to do that at the time. This was a few years ago. And so I credit Max for then all of a sudden like people knew me, which was wild. And it kind of went from there. I did another program that these two were in, called On Deck. You were in On Deck, yeah. And there was a demo day in that, and I did that, and it was very sort of a public thing. Bubble was the judge at demo day, and offered me a teaching gig, so now I teach for Bubble, and it just kind of went on and on from there. So soon after, I got a job as a developer at a startup, a Bubble developer, so I did that for a couple years until it got acquired, and now I'm back to freelancing. And I think the sort of distinguishing thing for my story is, well, one, I didn't come from tech at all. I was like in a whole different world before this. Two, I was a designer, which is fairly rare for Bubble. And three, I'm a lady, which is also pretty rare. And I think is sort of a distinguishing thing, you know, when I meet people. They're like, oh, I am, well, and I'm real, I actually exist. So yeah, that's my story.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for teeing me up there. A little shout out. But firstly, the app that Kelly built, was probably the most beautiful but also powerful, or at least complex application that I've seen built on Bubble, at least at that time. And is it? Can you? Oh, closer. It was. It kind of blew me away, and I think at that time, I took a good couple of days to process what Kelly had built, and I think on Twitter I was kind of just gushing over all the stuff that she was building. So if you haven't seen Rote, which Kelly has built, you should definitely check it out. So what about me? So essentially at university I began a startup. It was an Airbnb for storage startup. I was kind of all in the sort of the startup-y Silicon Valley vibe of thinking about startups at the time. So I was thinking big, but I was a little bit naive at the time. But also couldn't code, and I wasn't technical, and the people that I was working with weren't technical as well. So I didn't really have the platform, or we didn't have the platform to build something that we wanted to build, or at least in the time frame that we wanted to build it. Anyway, long story short, that failed, and a lot of the reason I put that down to is because we couldn't actually build anything that fast or that good for the users that we had. So I went down the kind of the route of trying to figure out how I could become a little bit more technical. And the only path at that point in time, in 2018, or at least that I knew about, was code. So I was signed up to a couple of coding boot camps, but never took the plunge. Thankfully, before I did, I found out about NoCode. And ever since, I've essentially been going all in on education. So obviously, we've got SaaS, we've got freelance, we've got employment, but now, I'm going all in on empowering others to kind of take the same journey that I have. The program that I run, some of you here today have gone through it. It's called 100 Days of NoCode, and it's an on-ramp. It's a way to get started on your NoCode journey. And I've recently started 100 Days of AI, because that's what everyone is doing now, apparently. So that's me.
Cool. So what should we... Do you want to dish out some tips, or?
Well, maybe we could talk a little bit about how we made the jump from full-time employment to NoCode, and how our products and stuff got started. I could talk a little bit about UserLoop.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing is I built the first version of the product over Christmas, and it was insanely basic. And I pretty much built it for fun, as a lot of people probably do with Bubble. I built tons of apps with it, really to try and learn the platform. And this was one that ended up kind of growing, I guess. It kind of started taking on a life of its own. I think a lot of people go through that process of, trying to find the product that hits. And this was the one that, I kind of got enough signals that it was, this is the one to pursue. But I think the thing is, I would say don't get too attached to the first idea, because the product that I have now is pretty much nothing like that product that I built on a weekend to start with. It's completely evolved through customer feedback, talking to the users in between, and trying to find the route to product market fit. So I would just say, try and settle on something that's, it doesn't have to be the perfect idea. You will iterate it as you go and find, the most important thing is to start and make progress, I think, with it. But I think the other big moment for it was really finding a customer traction channel where I could actually drive, paid customers to sign up and use the app. And for me, that was turning it into a Shopify app. So getting exposure to the Shopify ecosystem and the App Store is the main way I get paid users onto the app. So those were the two kind of key moments for me, was really starting with something basic, iterating, and finding a traction channel that you could actually drive paid users on. I mean, the other thing with Bubble, you probably kind of realize as you scale with it, is you come up against different challenges that you never thought about at the beginning. So when you suddenly have 1 million rows in the database or whatever, it becomes you've got a different set of challenges than when you first started building the app. So I was kind of just finding solutions as you go through. So, starting to use third-party databases to help speed up certain things in Bubble and keep costs under control and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that would probably be my main two things: is start it, iterate it, find a traction channel, and have fun with it as well. That's why I've done this. I'm so happy I left my job. I love every day. Don't get those Monday scary things. Because it's like what I do for fun. I think lots of people build with Bubble because it is fun. I find it almost like a video game. It's awesome. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I got into it. But I would definitely recommend also not taking that jump from full-time employment into a SaaS idea without some kind of validation. So I was running it for a year, trying to get, proving that someone would pay for it, basically, because I didn't want to leave my job and go to an app that was making zero money, because I knew I would be under insane pressure, and if it would have been super stressful. So I kind of reduced the stress level a bit by getting some kind of product market fit before I took the jump from my job. Obviously, it wasn't 100% what my job was paying me before when I left, but it was enough that I could have some confidence that I'm not completely on the wrong track with this thing. So that was kind of how I made that transition, I guess. But I don't know about you.
Well, I was just curious because part of your journey is really interesting in the sense that you did the whole VC-backed thing, and now you're kind of making a living off the no-code-backed kind of pathway. How do those two different pathways differ, and how does no-code impact that kind of side of things?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of differences in the way that the cost structure is like radically different for me anyway, from a coded startup to a no-code startup. Like the operating costs were a lot lower for me. The development costs are a lot lower. The speed and iteration has been a lot higher with no-code. So it's allowed me to start this product, so start UserLoop with no funding. I don't intend to take any funding. Like it gives you full control over your own destiny. Whereas I think maybe 10 years ago, unless you were a programmer or you raised funding to pay a programmer, it was very, very hard to kickstart a SaaS. Whereas now I think anyone, you pretty much don't need anything. You need a $30 bubble plan to get started, and you can start with start validating your product. And operate it at probably at a cost advantage. So I probably have competitor apps who are VC funded and who have massive developer salaries to pay and all the rest of it. I don't, so I can probably be a little bit more cost competitive on what I charge for the app as well. So there are a couple of advantages to doing it. But yeah, and also just speed. That speed. It's not just cost with no code that's a massive benefit. It is that iteration speed, which is all that matters early on in the startup. Unless the product is moving forward quickly, you're probably not going to get there. Like you need to be responding to users and building what they want. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing about no code really is once you get to grips with a tool, whatever tool you use, it is scarily easy to build a product. Like as Kelly said, it took like a few days, right? And I've definitely built full products in less than a week. So now the real challenge is like, what should I build? Because from personal experience, I've built so many things, but they didn't have any customers because I never validated the idea first. And I think James is doing some really smart things. I'm always very jealous of the way you have B2B customers. You're going through the Shopify app store, so you've got like a platform that essentially is finding you customers for you, and it's all very good advice, I think, for anyone who's trying to do that. Did the idea stem from the work that you were doing before?
Yeah, so I guess I've had a bit of an e-commerce background, so I knew that there was this challenge with brands or people who run stores on Shopify not always knowing who their customers are, where they're coming from, trying to rely on analytics too much when actually it's easier just to ask the customer, how did you hear about us, or where, what could we be doing better? So I had a bit of an idea of it from that, but I'd spent a long time thinking about what exact app I wanted to build, because I was like, I'm going to be doing this for like many years, I think. So I did like think a lot about what I was going to do, but like I say as well, the app has changed radically, and I've been building features, being quite ruthless about removing features when they don't move the needle, because the less features I have to maintain as well is good. So it's I think that's kind of what I thought.
Oh, we've got a question.
Yes. Yeah, of course. This is something I'm good at, but it's also my weakness, is being scrappy. So we essentially DM'd lots of people. So I guess to give you context, when I started, I had 0 Twitter followers, so I had no audience and no kind of contacts in the space apart from a couple of relationships that I'd built on Twitter, and that was kind of the key. So instead of going on Twitter and starting to build an audience, I started building relationships with a couple of people that were already in the space. So although I had 0 followers, I did have like a social capital, if you will, of a couple of people that may or may not have supported me when I kind of launched or started something. So, which I'm very thankful for those people till this day. But essentially then, I started this thing without trying to acquire 100 users. I didn't want to acquire 100 users. All I wanted to do was to learn to NoCode. So that wasn't the objective, but I did want to help others on that journey, or at least have some community or some other people around me at the time. So I launched, or kind of literally announced on Twitter and said, hey, I'm starting this 100 Days of NoCode challenge. It's the middle of lockdown. What else are we going to do but learn new, interesting skills? And a few other people joined. But the key for me to kind of get other people and get that ball rolling, especially the hashtag going, was actually asking those 2 people or 3 people that I built relationships with and saying, look, do you want to co-sign this with me? Do you want to co-do this? And join the challenge as well. And just tapping into their networks, them sharing through their distribution channels rather than mine, really got the ball rolling. Even though it wasn't a big wave at the start, that was the ball that kind of, or the thing, or the push that got us started.
I think that's one thing that like all of us have done is built community sort of before we tried to make money from it. I'm not as familiar with your story in this, but like, when I was freelancing as a web designer, I had no designer friends, no network whatsoever, professionally, right, for peers. And it was really lonely, and I did it for a long time, and it just sucked. It was really, really difficult. And so when I started with Bubble, I was like, the first thing I'm doing is finding people. And so that was why I joined Max's community, and it just so happened that Max's part of the program was like tweeting about what you're doing in the program. And so I had no idea that like Bubble and Twitter are like, that's where bubblers hang out, is Twitter. Who knew, right? I had no idea. And so I'm tweeting just because Max is telling me to, and all of a sudden I have like all these friends. and Bubble is such a like generous community that people just build each other up and they share each other's stuff and they like, you know, props to people. And it's just like, I don't know, like the perfect little utopia. Or it was at the time anyway. A lot of people have kind of bolted from that space recently. Who knows why? But yeah, the community aspect of of freelancing anyway, and launching something, I think has just been key for all of us. It's really hard to, I would expect, really hard to do this kind of work in a vacuum. For one, it's too difficult, and you need friends who know more than you to ask for help when you don't know how to like set up that API or whatever, right? But also just like, you know, it's lonely and you need friends who understand what you do and are also really excited about it. And yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't actually do any like trying to find clients. Like people message me to ask if I have availability to build because they've watched a YouTube video that I made where I just taught some little thing, or they've seen something else I've built. So I get to like have fun building my own things and then share them, and then people are like, oh, I have an idea similar to that. Could you build it for me?
Also, Bubble freelancers tend to be really busy. Like once they're established and get one project, I feel like then it's kind of easy to get work, and then you're booked, and you're still getting incoming requests. This is my experience. And then you got to give them to, you got to like, you don't have to, but like you want to refer someone. So if you know other bubblers who are also freelancers, we're always just sending each other work. So it's this like nice little loop. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
And I was gonna ask. So you became a freelancer pretty quickly after you started using Bubble, right? And an educator as well. Like, what advice would you give to someone? Like, how can someone else follow in your footsteps and do it that quickly?
Yeah, I think one of the key things for me was doing like public events, right? Max's demo day and then on deck demo day. Like a lot of people watch those things, and it just sort of like is a natural progression then. And my first freelance projects came out of the on deck program that I was in. Like that was a community of founders they had another program for full of founders, and all of them needed to build something, and most of them were non-technical. And so, like, I was the bubble girl who could, like, build the thing, and it was just very easy. Unfortunately, On Deck shut that program down, so you got to join Max's program, and there's fewer bubblers in there, I think. Is that right?
There's fewer bubblers, but we're kind of tool agnostic in our approach, but we invite anyone that's learning all these shiny skills. So I'm conscious of time, and I want to make sure you guys have your questions answered. So let's open it up. Who has some questions? Maybe just raise your hand. Over to you.
We'll repeat the question, too.
Yeah.
So.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for this. Been following a lot of you on Twitter, for a while. Pretty awesome that everybody's here. I just wanted to ask the question about failure and sort of the decoupling of what you're building from what you're learning. And if you could talk a little bit about how, skills you pick up in some random project. Sorry, everyone. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate your thoughts and just sharing your stories today. My name is Tom. I'm from X-Ray Tech. We built an automation search engine called X-Ray Tools. If you're trying to figure out what you can automate with the tools you already use, please check it out. Been following you guys for a long time. Really appreciate your stories. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about sort of the transferable skills that you've accumulated from one project that maybe didn't work out and, quote, failed, and gets to be repurposed and reborn into a new project, and what that cycle is like, just from your own experience. Would love to hear how you guys view failure and sort of the ongoing process of building and learning, because it's new for everybody, right? So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can take that. I've got a lot of failures, a whole folder full of them. So like the great thing about doing like education, so I like create courses and I create YouTube tutorials, is like sometimes I will learn something specifically so I can teach it, but then I can then apply it into my own projects. And actually the other day, I knew that I wanted to implement something in one of my apps, but I also wanted to teach it in my course, so I just did both at the same time. I taught it as I was doing it. And then every time I do that, I'm learning something. So like there's never a failed project. Like even if no one ever uses it, I've always learned something. And like in Bubble, you can kind of copy and paste like whole workflows and stuff between projects. So it really is literally transferable. So I often go back to my older projects when I've forgotten how I've done something, and I'll be like, oh, I did that in something like 6 months ago, and I'll go back and I'll see how I did it. And so like all of these failed projects, as long as I remember to cancel the billing so I'm not still paying for them, which, yeah, don't want to talk about my Bubble bill. They're all like, there is a repository of like different techniques and ideas and things like that. So yeah, for me, I just build for fun, and yeah, there's no wasted apps, really. There's no wasted time when it comes to that.
I'll just say quickly, one of the things that I fail at constantly is connecting anything to Bubble. I just hate it. APIs, I just never ever want to do it, and I have to all the time. And I recently realized, like, I don't have to do that. I can outsource that. You know what I mean? So like, it's fine to fail at something and then just be a failure at that thing, because someone else loves that crap, and I will happily let them do it. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing your experience. I'm a Bubble freelancer, and I thought a lot about creating a course. And I'm very curious, how did you do it? How did you manage? Like, I feel like there are a lot of courses on the web. So how do you stand out? And especially because I specialize as a Bubble designer, so I'm really into front. So I relate to your experience. So how do you like stand out if you want to create a course? And how do you have the time, guys? Beside like regular work, how do you have the time to create courses?
That's you, Kieran.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't have the time. I've got 2 kids. I don't know. When I was working full time, I don't know how I did it, just in the evenings. But so if I'm making a course, like firstly, don't try and do something perfect, because you'll just go crazy like editing video or trying to say something correctly. I keep mine really simple. I just talk as I'm building, and then I'll go through afterwards and I'll just chop out the bits where I mess up. And if I don't know what I'm saying, I'll just stop and think for a bit, and then I'll just cut that bit out later. And it's not polished, but I think it gets the message across. And I know that if I tried to do it in a more polished way, I probably just would end up not launching the courses. The other thing I do is I always pre-sell them. So think of a concept for your course, like make a landing page, and get people to pay. Like give them a 50% discount if they sign up, because if I don't have like some people who have actually bought it and money sitting there, then I won't have the motivation to finish it, because it is so much work. Like the course I just finished, I was supposed to finish in May. I just finished it like last week. It was like a real slog. But I knew that I had like paying customers who are expecting me to launch the course. So anything else I would have given up, but I couldn't do it because I didn't want to have to refund like all these people. So I think if you can pick like an interesting angle, and I think design in Bubble is still something that everyone struggles with, particularly beginners. I really think there's a huge market for that. I wish I could do a Bubble design course. Like the only person doing that is Build Camp, Gregory John. And so if you can do another design course, I think that would be super popular. But yeah, just come up with the concept, write the contents, what's going to be in it, but don't actually record anything until you know that people want it, and then you'll have loads of motivation to finish it off.
Other questions? Yeah.
Hello, guys. Thanks for the talk. My biggest question right now is about marketing yourself. I think as someone who doesn't really know how to engage socially online, and also the landscape, for example, on Twitter has changed quite a bit since you guys started. If there is one advice you would give in terms of building an audience or community, making friends online, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it goes back to like, yeah, I'll say this if that's okay. Yeah, so I think goes back to like the first point around just optimizing for community rather than audience. But then the second thing is like, yeah, if everyone is building an audience on Twitter, it doesn't mean you have to. Like, it's just one channel, and also it's just like reverse engineering from who you want to speak to eventually, or who you want to build that community around. So it may be that you want to build an audience on Twitter to build like a community of people that refer work to you, like Kelly mentioned. And then you may want to use LinkedIn to actually find the people that are going to pay for your client work. So it's really about kind of, okay, who do you want to speak to? What is the outcome you actually want to get from those channels? And then, yeah, spending time on the ones you think are gonna give you that that distribution and that contact. But it also just goes back to testing. Like you may find that, or think that Twitter is great for creators, but maybe actually LinkedIn is better. So there's a little bit of a case of just like parallel testing it and trying to build an audience on a couple of channels or that you think are optimal or could be good, and then kind of drilling down like over time.
Yeah, I would just say I think I get the most interest on like Twitter or something when I launch something new. So again, like it goes into the whole thing, I just build stuff for fun. They fail, I don't get any users, but I launch it on Twitter and people are like, oh, that's cool, and maybe they'll try it out. And that generates interest, and then they know what I can do, and then maybe I'll get freelance clients from that later on. Yeah, there's loads of things about building audiences and different platforms, but just create content about stuff that you're excited about. So like if you're building things, like when I'm excited about something, which is just building, I'll just tweet random things about it, or I'll make a YouTube video where I just talk through an app I've built, and people watch that and they can tell you're excited, and you know they like that. And so yeah, just stick to that. Don't try and do all like the memes or like the threads and stuff like that with you know insincere advice. Just do something you're passionate about.
And I would say as well, I mean, I don't acquire any customers from my app through the people that follow me on Twitter. I've kind of like, the stuff I talk about on Twitter is kind of NoCode and how to build the SaaS. So none of my customers are like e-commerce store owners. So all the customers for my app come through other channels like SEO and advertising, paid advertising, that kind of stuff. So it's like having a following isn't the be all and end all. Like I haven't had got any customers from followers. It's been through other channels. So yeah, you can experiment and like see what works for you. It doesn't always have to be, you know, people from Twitter. It really depends on your product or your service that you're selling, I guess.
I also think it doesn't have to be like content that you create. You can just participate in the conversation through commenting on other people's stuff and asking questions. You don't have to like be the creator of the conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we've got 5 minutes. If we've got any more?
There's one over there.
Hi guys, I have a question about imposter syndrome, if that means anything for you guys. When did you consider that you were good enough to be valuable freelance and good enough so that someone would actually pay you to do what you've been doing for fun or for other reasons?
I can speak to that. So it's funny because I think this is true for a lot of bubblers is when you start out, you just feel like you have a superpower all of a sudden and you feel like you can do anything. And so I kind of had the opposite at the beginning because I got a lot of good feedback and I was like, oh, I'm amazing at this. And then I got this job and immediately was like, oh my God, I know nothing. I know nothing. And here they are, like they've invested in me and they expect a lot from me. And I just felt really awful all the time for months. And until I realized that, like, one, I could use my boss, who was a very good bubbler, his name is Jake Singer. I could use him. Like, he could help me, and he wanted to help me so I could be better at it, right? So I think, like, having people who are better than you at the thing around and just ask them for help, it does a lot, right? And also, like, understanding how hard it is. It actually is hard. It's not in your head that it's hard, right? And once you, like, understand what's hard, then you can learn the hard thing. And then you've learned the hard thing, and you're not as insecure about it. But, yeah, I don't know if that actually answers the question. But that was my experience, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've still got imposter syndrome, for sure. But the crazy thing is, I'd only been doing Bubble for, like, I don't know, a few months. When me and Pablo decided to make our first course to teach other people, we were still like basically beginners, and we were just so excited about what we'd learned that we wanted to share it with other people. So we're like, let's make a course, which just seems crazy because now I look back and I'm like, I know so much more now. But honestly, because I was always building apps for myself, no one ever really saw my build process or anything. So I didn't have any feedback on whether it was good or terrible, or I was doing things completely the wrong way. The first time I actually thought, hey, maybe I am doing things the right way is when I applied to AirDev to be a partner developer for them. And they you have to go through an assessment and they look at your build quality and they look at everything you've done. And yeah, I passed that. Well, I failed the first time. Then I went back and did it again and I passed it. And then I started doing projects for them and they have like a QA person who tests your app, and they have a project manager who is also talking to the client. So that's the first time I had external feedback. And if you're working for an agency and it's a good agency like AirDev and they know their stuff, then it makes you better, but also you will know pretty quickly if you're good enough for them or not. And then you'll have to raise your standards or carry on. So yeah, that's the first time I've actually had people say, okay, you're doing a good job. This is good bubbling, as opposed to whatever else I was doing before. So yeah, if you're hoping to freelance and you want to build the confidence, I would absolutely say go work at an agency or become a developer for an agency for a bit at least, so you can build that confidence and be sure that you're doing things the right way. Because if you're self-taught, there is a risk that you will be building in the wrong way or forgetting your privacy rules or something like that, which you should never do. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple more minutes if there's...
Well, what about the people? We planted some people to ask questions. Where are they? What about Ash, do you have... Oh, Benoit?
I have a question for you, James. How did you get feedback when building user loop, since it's not on your side or it's with Shopify and stuff?
Yeah, so the main ways I kind of look to see, what customers are doing, how can I improve the product. There's a few key things I have. So first I use Crisp, which is like the chat thing. So customers write to me and say, oh, I wish the app did this. That's one way. I have session recording, so I use Full Story. Works really great with Bubble, so you can watch what users are doing. You find a lot of stuff that's confusing and broken in the app, and I've completely redesigned sections that I thought were great, but watching them back, people completely didn't get. And the other one is Mixpanel, so I have Mixpanel throughout the application to track, how many people are getting through my onboarding flow, what step are they falling off at, which bits aren't working. And again, it's super. I've written articles how to set all that up for Bubble, and it works great. It's pretty much like any other SaaS that was coded. Like it's those same tools, and they work great with no-code tools like Bubble too. But yeah, it's just mostly talking to customers, and actually speaking to them.
So you got all of this information and managed to incorporate all of this feedback without directly talking to any of them? Is it what you're saying?
Never talk to your users.
Yeah, mostly through chat. Most people don't want to get on a call, or they would rather just chat or email you. So yeah, I'm not very rare that I would speak to a customer, which is kind of great for me because calls are usually kind of a waste of time. So I'm fine with the chat, but yeah, I'm doing customer support wherever I am, in the middle of a field at Glastonbury, in a queue at the supermarket. My phone is going off all the time, and that's it's kind of fun, but it's crazy, and it's part of being an indie kind of developer, I guess. But yeah. Any others? How are we doing?
We've got maybe last question, I think.
Yeah, you just touched on this customer support, and that you are in the middle of the field, and you are in the queue in the shop, and Kieran said his dream is to build a SaaS that you build it once and then the money comes, but you also mentioned you build the SaaS, and now there is a lot of things that you didn't think before that you will have to do. So how much actually time it takes once you build a successful, successful SaaS, in the meaning that it generates you recurring revenue, and how much now you have to maintain the app, and how much it takes to provide the customer support? Is it like a full-time day that you have to work on that, or it's the dream of the SaaS that you can build it and then hopefully it generates the money for you?
Yeah, it's definitely full-time working on it. I try and reduce customer support as much as I can through, writing articles, videos, and self-service stuff. And in terms of time I spend actually building the app, I try and reduce that as much as I can, because I'm sure a lot of people, it's super fun to build in Bubble, but if I just did that, I wouldn't have any customers. So I have to force myself to do all the marketing stuff, writing blog posts, doing videos, all this other stuff. But yeah, what I'd rather do is just sit in the Bubble editor all day, building cool features. But that's kind of so you've got to have a bit of discipline to do the non-fun stuff like support and marketing and that as well. But yeah, it's for me anyway. It's not just a passive income. It's a full-time. It's more intense than my my full-time job I had before. But it's fun, so I kind of don't mind it.
Yeah, I think it depends on the type of SaaS and the type of customers you have. So mine is a landing page builder for indie makers, and I can honestly say I do maybe 1 hour a month on it, if that. So yeah, the MRR is only $700 a month, but some months I don't do anything on it. So it does seem to just get by on its own. I don't do any marketing or anything like that, but maybe I just got lucky with that particular niche or friendly indie maker customers. Yeah, I think that's us done.
Thank you for the
questions. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for the questions, everyone.